Welcome to NEWS.am. My guest is Turkish historian, director of the Armenian Genocide program of the Promise Armenian Institute at the University of California, Los Angeles, Mr. Taner Akcam. Mr. Akcam, thank you very much for this opportunity and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Akcam, about half a year has passed since the launch of the normalization process between Armenia and Turkey, and there are already some agreements about the opening of the border for the citizens of the third countries, also for launching their direct air cargo trade. Moreover, after about 10 years, there was a first contact between the leaders of Armenia and Turkey. And what do you think? Are there real chances for normalization between Armenia and Turkey right now, taking into account many circumstances?
It depends what you understand from normalization. I mean, we have to make a distinction between establishment of diplomatic relation and normalization. I think it's a very good thing that both parties are talking to each other. They are neighbors, and you cannot choose your neighbor. You have to find way to live together with your neighbor with all the problems associated with it. And there is nothing we can argue against the diplomatic relations. This is where we were in 1991, and in the world, in international relations, even the enemy countries have diplomatic relations with each other. So I'm fully supporting establishment of diplomatic relations and opening the border between both countries because of various reasons. But whether we can call this normalization of relations, this is something different. I mean, you can be adversaries, you can be enemies of each other, but you can still have open border and diplomatic relations with each other. So I'm in favor of diplomatic relations, opening the border between both, because I see this as an important precondition for the normalization of relations.
And do we have real chances for establishing diplomatic relations and opening the border, which will be the vital basis for the further normalization, as you mean?
It will help to normalization. There are different levels we have to look into this story. I'm a person follows Hrant Dink's footsteps. For me, the most important thing that we have to increase the relationship between both people. This is crucial for us. And closing the border or closed border or not having diplomatic relation between both countries is one of the basic hurdles of direct relationship of people to each other. So from that, I think diplomatic border will help. And the other important issue, Armenia can start to discuss certain problem directly with Turkey. So the parties can talk to each other. Whether it will help to normalization, this is another question. I have to emphasize, or your listener know very well, actually Turkish-Armenian relations, or the relation between Turkey and Armenia, is under the shadow of Azerbaijan. So it was not actually Turkey who from the beginning denied any diplomatic relation of normalization of relations with Armenia. It was Azerbaijan took Turkey hostage not to develop these relations. And there were several Turkish governments. For some of them, it was a welcome opportunity because they didn't want any direct relation with Armenia anyway, or there were others because of economic or other geostrategic interest, they followed Azerbaijani's footsteps. So whether or not this normalization process or this process can develop an independent Turkey-Armenia relations is to observe, is to see. I'm not so sure about it, and I'm not an international relations expert in that regard, but we have to look these also very closely. Again, for people's coming together, for people connection with each other. This is the bottom-up relation, what we call it, or the third level of conflict resolution. I'm all in favor of developing relations between both parties.
Mr. Akcam, hearing the announcements of the Turkish government high-level officials, what's your impression? Does Erdogan really want the stage to normalize relations with Armenia, to establish diplomatic relations, and make some atmosphere for the improvement between the two people, the Armenian people, the Turkish people, about which you mentioned?
I cannot read the mind of Turkish politicians, and I can't say anything about their intentions. How bad intention they might have, we have to see that in diplomacy or international relations, you have to look from other aspects to the problem. You can never know the intention, but you can read the conditions. Here, what I see that speaks in favor of Turkey's interest developing the relation with Armenia. Number one, economic interests. Turkey is economically very strong country. And definitely despite their economic problems today, okay, they have serious economic problem, but it's a very powerful country. And they would gain economically a lot by opening border and developing diplomatic relations with Armenia, with normalization, because it will open their direct connection to Armenia and via Nakhchivan, if the negotiations ends positively, through a railway or other connection direct to Azerbaijan and other part of the Central Asian states. This is a huge economic gain for Turkey. And this was not possible because of Azerbaijan. I have to underline that point again. And the second, Turkey wants to be a regional power. And every big state wants to be a big regional power in its own region. And it is in interest of Turkey, if Turkey wants to be a regional power, to direct develop its relations with Armenia. We should never forget Turkey's only precondition, or the main precondition for the direct relationship with Armenia, was the Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh issue. And this was made as a precondition. From a discursive standpoint, from an ideological standpoint, Turkey has no any other argument anymore. There was a war, Azerbaijan won the war, and practically now Armenia lost an important part of Nagorno-Karabakh. And one of the major preconditions that Turkey put forward to develop diplomatic relations with Armenia is not anymore there. It is, unfortunately or fortunately, it has been realized on the battleground. So Turkey has no other preconditions. And for that reason also, I think it is in interest of Turkey to develop these relations. So I believe in their seriousness, quote unquote. But this seriousness from Turkish side, I have to emphasize, very much depend on Azerbaijan policies in the area. We should never forget, Armenian people knows very well, better than we international observers of the developments, Azerbaijan's policy is not stabilized in Nagorno-Karabakh. They aim already a long-term, a kind of, how we can describe, a kind of ethnic cleansing policy, maybe in the region. And maybe you journalists know, maybe the listener doesn't know, Center for Truth and Justice developed an alternative report on Azerbaijani violations of international conventions. So we know already that there are certain real human rights violations in Nagorno-Karabakh, in Artsakh, and how this violation could develop, whether Azerbaijan would develop other preconditions for Turkey's negotiations, we don't know. So this is a very fragile area that I cannot tell more, but what I would like to emphasize, Azerbaijani shadow is there, it will continue to stay there. And since now Azerbaijan gave the green light to Turkey for this direct negotiation, we should really we should use this as much as possible.
Mr. Akcam, what do you think? What is the situation related to the Armenian genocide issue? Armenian side, as previously, doesn't put forward any precondition related to the recognition of the Armenian genocide by Turkey, and there are official announcements by the Armenian Turkish side that there are no preconditions in this negotiation process. But parallelly, before the process and during this process, there were various announcements about, by the higher-level Turkish officials related to the Armenian genocide issue in its denial manner, that there's a problem related to the Armenian diaspora, that the Armenian diaspora harmed this normalization process, and there shouldn't be discussions related to the Armenian genocide, which, according to the Turkish official position, harmed this normalization process. What do you think? The issue of the Armenian genocide, what is the influence of this issue on the current normalization process between Yerevan and Ankara?
We are back 1991. I remember vividly the discussions during the Petrosyan period, whether genocide should be an issue in diplomatic relation between both countries. To my knowledge, Turkish government at this very moment did not elevate the genocide issue as a precondition between both countries' relations. This was one of the issues in 1991. I remember Turkey was pressuring Armenia, that the Armenia pressured diaspora to stop the genocide recognition campaigns, and so on and so forth, or the issue with the international agreement, Kars and Moscow agreements, and so on. I think today's international relations is way over that problem. Today, Turkey knows also Armenia as a state is not a strong state, and Turkey also learned within these 30, 40 years of development, Armenia cannot create any precondition to Armenian diaspora. Armenian diaspora is an independent entity. Even if Armenia wants diaspora to stop the genocide issue, it won't happen. It is an unrealistic scenario. And if Turkey creates these or increases these to an official, as an official position, it should be dismissed clearly. And it cannot be a topic of debate at all. And as we all know, I mean, from my end, to be honest with you, the recognition of Armenian genocide is ended. I mean, the problem is solved. Can you tell me who hasn't recognized the Armenian genocide in the world besides Turkey and Azerbaijan? So the recognition of Armenian genocide is a fact in international relations. And America recognized the Armenian genocide, and Turkey has a normal relation with United States, and it's the same for all other countries. I don't think that it is a realistic assumption from Turkish side to increase this genocide recognition or genocide issue as a part of diplomatic negotiation. It might be, I mean, some politicians out there, especially from the right-wing extreme nationalists, because they are against these kind of development of relations. They might raise their voices in that regard, but I don't think that this kind of attitude will find any support even within Turkish society. Nobody would support such a claim from Turkish government.
Mr. Akcam, you researched the Armenian genocide issue for many years, and it's interesting your opinion on why Turkey doesn't want to recognize the Armenian genocide issue, and what is the current perception of the Armenian people and the Armenian genocide issue among the Turkish society. What are the fears in Turkey related to this issue?
I mean, we have to distinguish between society's attitude and the state's attitude. From society's attitude point of view, I would say, maybe I emphasize a lot, and I have to emphasize a lot. Hrant Dink played a crucial role, okay? Hrant Dink changed the heart and mind of Turkish people. I don't think that we are there where we were in 1990s. Today, I would argue even, maybe it is too optimistic for your listeners, we won the psychological war within Turkish society. Those who think critically on Armenian genocide and who are in favor of opening the border and acknowledging the Armenian genocide. I'll give you one example. In 1990s and early 2000s, until Hrant Dink's assassination, we were the target of an hate campaign. We were dragged from courtroom to courtroom, and some of us were assassinated like Hrant Dink, and there were court cases, arrests against Turkish intellectuals, there were death threats, a huge campaign, even within United States, there was a huge campaign against me. We were in defensive position and they were attacking us. And look today, what is happening in Turkey. Turkish government, even though so strong, when they organize conferences, last April, they organized a conference. If you listen to the conferences, the speeches of the ministers in that conference, they were in defensive. They were defending their position. There was not an aggressive hate campaign against us. They knew we won the academic war. We won the war about the truth. This is the reason they are in defensive position. So this is what in societal level, even though everything looks like very frozen in Turkey today. So then it can be only understood if you look the state side of the development. Turkish state is today back its default codes, okay? Turkey is back in 1920s, traditional denials policy, along with a dictatorial regime in Turkey. So these all opening that we experienced with the independence of Armenia, with the growing of civil society, they were all taking back now. There is winter back in Turkey again, let me put that way. Osman Kavala, everyone knows, a very important civil society activist who promote Turkish-Armenian dialogue and relations. He's in prison. And there are court cases against Armenian deputy Garopaylan. And despite this negative effect of Turkish state, I think we are way ahead where we were early 1990s. Even though Turkish state is back to its default position, to its denialist position, and only it can change if we have a certain democratization in Turkey. It's directly related. And my guess is this winter period we are living through now will be a very short one, because there is a mindset in Turkey in generally, this is my claim, this is my argument, that everyone knows something that happened way back 1915. This is the common attitude within the society. Even the government knows that, and they cannot stop this development of the wheels, this development of the history.
Mr. Akcam, and I want to repeat the last question. What are the concrete fears of the Turkish state what refers to the recognition of the Armenian genocide? What are the concrete concerns?
I forgot to answer that part of the question. Yes, you are right. Very simple. Reparation. There are
the legal aftermaths of the recognition.
Of course, if you acknowledge that there was something wrong in the past, something wrong happened, you don't need to call this genocide, okay? You can call this war crime. You can call this crime against humanity. Any wrongdoing, according to international law also, any wrongdoing in the past, if one party acknowledges this wrongdoing, it must be rectified. So the major fear for me, the Turkey's major fear, if they acknowledge the Armenian genocide, they feel that they were compelled to pay reparation and restitution to Armenian people. This is the major obstacle. And there is a second one, which might be called a psychological factor. You know, every nation is proud of its founding fathers. Turkey's founding fathers, Turkey also proud of their founding fathers, Mustafa Kemal and other founding fathers. And we believe that we created a nation from nothing and we fought against imperialist powers and so on and so forth. If you acknowledge a historic wrongdoing, you should also acknowledge at the same time the role of these founding fathers that they played during Armenian genocide.
Union and Progress Party.
Turkish War of Liberation, what we call it, or Turkish Independence War, mainly organized by Union and Progress Party, which was the main party organized the Armenian genocide. So if you acknowledge the Armenian genocide, you have to acknowledge also that an important number of your founding fathers were either murderers or they became rich by plundering Armenian properties. So making villain of the heroes is not a simple process. And you can do that actually in democratic societies. Look here, in United States, you don't be put in prison. You are not going to be put in prison if you say that American founding fathers were the slave owners and they were in favor of slavery, or if you claim here in America that the American president gave even incentives to exterminate Native Americans. They played an important role in Native American genocide. This is common knowledge, and you can repeat this. And Turkey should also develop to that level. This is if a nation can openly talk about the past bad events and about the role of their founding fathers in these human rights abuses in the past, they can establish a better democratic society. It's not harmful, actually. What we, Turks, generally should understand that talking about our past and national fathers and their roles in involvement in Armenian genocide or in other mass atrocities is in interest of Turkish people today, for a better democratic society.
Mr. Akcam, it's interesting. What are the perspectives for the reparation process after the recognition of the Armenian genocide by the United States?
I don't think that it is on the agenda in United States. United States government.
I mean individually.
The American recognition of Armenian genocide is categorically different than the recognition of Armenian genocide by any other European countries. You can file the lawsuit against the countries, against the states, or companies related with that state to the court in United States. There are three preconditions for it. Number one, the event in talk should be recognized by federal government as crime against humanity, not even genocide. And secondly, these companies or states that you want to file a lawsuit against, they should make profit from that crime, 1915 in our case. So you have to prove that the Turkish Central Bank or other Turkish companies directly, technically became one of the participants in genocidal process and made themselves rich from that. And the third precondition is you have to show that United States has a trade relation or economic relation with these companies, that these companies, Central Bank or any other big Turkish company, had in economic relation with United States. Then you can bring a lawsuit. And in Holocaust, we know there are several examples. And based on these three preconditions, the Jewish organization, the claim committee, for example, which was established in 1951, filed several lawsuits in United States, and they won more than $9 billion, not as a result of the court cases, but as a result of the negotiations. So there is technically the possibility to file lawsuits here in United States. There are, of course, some legal issues there. It's not a one-way street. I don't want to go into details of these legal issues. One central question that every Armenian should know, whether this American recognition of Armenian genocide by Congress and by President, whether it's legally binding. It's a disputable issue. In Holocaust, we have legally binding resolutions in Congress, okay? In 1998, in 2004 or 5, I forgot, but lately, 2016, American Congress passed a law which is legally binding for American legal system. I think for Armenian diaspora, this might be one of the important goals, to have such a Congress resolution so that the court cases can be made here in the United States possible. I think this is one of the possible revenues for Armenian diaspora to follow. Whether they can do that, it's an open question, because one important precondition is that the Armenian diaspora organization should unite. They should develop a kind of the movement, Armenian genocide restitution movement, like the case of Holocaust. In Holocaust, more than 20 different Jewish organizations came together and established this kind of an umbrella organization. I think this is a good thing for Armenian diaspora to think in the same direction.
Mr. Akcam, coming back to the Armenian-Turkish normalization process, there is a serious concern among the Armenian society related to the normalization process, and the most repeated argument related to this is the following. How is it possible to normalize relations with Turkey? How is it possible to have normal relations when, for example, in 2020, Turkey openly supported Azerbaijan in its bloody war against Artsakh, and when the Azerbaijani aggressive and Armeniophobic rhetoric and activities are continued, and Turkey openly supports officially this rhetoric and these activities by Azerbaijan. So what's your take on this? What's your impression? How is it possible, if there are these facts and there are these concerns among the Armenian society, and these concerns are relied on objective facts which take place only 2 years ago.
These are not arguments against getting in the process of normalization. I mean, this concern that you expressed, these are legitimate concerns. You cannot argue against these concerns or that these kind of activities from Turkish side never existed. This is the fact. This is on the ground, and we should know this as reality. The question is whether we can achieve a better relation.
Yes, I mean the results of the process.
By closing the border, by cutting any relations, or using the opening border, diplomatic relation, and other kind of bilateral relations, at least to achieve a certain changes in Turkish domestic policies. I understand this concern. I think they are legitimate concern because this is very open, aggressive foreign policy of Turkey, not related to Armenia only. Look what's going on in Syria today. Turkish policy towards Kurds in Syria or generally towards Syria. And these are really serious issues, and you can change this attitude. At least you have the chance, you have the opportunity to change these attitudes if you have more bilateral relations between both nations.
Mr. Akcam, and the last question, you mentioned that there is a serious economic crisis in Turkey, and the rating of Erdogan and its party is low currently. And what's your impression? Are there real chances for Erdogan to re-elect it in the upcoming elections? Or, in other words, are there real chances for the change of power in Turkey?
This is $1 million question, and nobody has a direct answer to it. As far as I follow Turkish press, it is very obvious that Erdogan and his partner, MHP, the extreme nationalist party, they will lose the elections, definitely. They have no chance to win the election. This is based on the polls that we know on the ground. But $1 million question is whether there will be a fair elections, number one, and number two, whether Erdogan and his partner is ready to give up the power, whether they will find something else to postpone the election or to suppress the election. And in Turkish history, we have enough examples. Armenian may remember 1912, it's called stick election. Union and Progress Party won the elections with violence overall Ottoman Empire. There might be possibilities, these kind of. And we don't know yet, but my optimistic assessment is there will be an election and the Erdogan will lose the election. This is my prediction, but I might be wrong. As I said, this is everyone has been debating and discussing in Turkey. If you open Turkish media, this is the only question that everyone debates and discusses around.
Mr. Akcam, and it's very interesting your opinion. If Erdogan, for example, fails in the elections, is it possible that he can try to preserve his power, for example, by repressions, by using force, and by other manners? Is it possible? And can this scenario lead to destabilization in Turkey?
This is one of the alternatives. We have to be scared. Turkey can launch a military operation in Syria against Kurds and use these as an excuse to postpone the elections. This is possible. We have to think this that next year is the 100th year of establishment of Turkish Republic, and Erdogan government may portray this military operation against Kurd as a problem of national existence, national survival, as it was the case according to official theory 1920s. So this is one of the possible scenarios that we should take into consideration.
Mr. Akcam, thank you very much for this very interesting interview. It was my pleasure to have an opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a nice day.
I remind that my guest was Turkish historian Taner Akcam.